In a remote and secluded part of the vast wilderness that is northwestern Canada lies a remarkable geological oddity. A deposit of oil so enormous that it rivals the entire Middle East as one of the world's last major reserves of crude oil. 1.7 trillion barrels of oil, enough to meet world demand for the next 50 years, trapped in the sand. One such company, dedicated to bringing this much-needed supply of crude oil to an energy-hungry world, is Canadian Natural Resources Limited. Their new delayed coker unit plant will eventually produce up to 110,000 barrels of synthetic crude oil every day by 2008. One of the largest and heaviest components of this new facility is a monstrous steel cylinder called a coker. This coker is part of the plant, which is being constructed by Technip. Measuring 300 feet in length, close to the size of a football field, and more than 30 feet in diameter, this massive iron leviathan weighs in at 1 million pounds, roughly the equivalent of 300 full-sized cars. And not one, but 4 of these gargantuan metal objects are required to complete the new CNRL extraction plant. These and almost every other component required to build the plant will be prefabricated in Edmonton, the nearest major city with large-scale manufacturing facilities, and then moved to the oil sands for final assembly, a distance of more than 300 miles along a narrow and busy 2-lane highway. The sheer size and weight of these objects and the enormous distance to be traveled seems a virtually impossible challenge. How do you move 4 300-foot-long cokers weighing 1 million pounds each that kind of distance? For the people at Canadian Natural Resources Limited, the answer was an easy one. They called Mammoet the worldwide specialists in heavy lifting and transport. Every day in countries throughout the world, Mammoet is in the business of making the impossible possible.
Well, the reason we chose Mammoet for this project is because of their resources and their ability to pull together from all over the world parts in order to be able to do this.
More than a year of planning and preparation has gone into this project, involving engineers, government agencies, utilities, city officials, and police departments. To ensure that this job is completed safely and successfully, no detail, no matter how small, can be overlooked. To accomplish their gargantuan mission, Mammoet had to design and build specialized equipment just for this job.
There's quite a significant amount of specialized equipment fabricated for this project. During the summer of 2005, we started with the fabrication of the additional equipment. So altogether, you need over a year's lead time before you can execute a transport of this magnitude.
Moving day, and time for months of planning and preparation to pay off. Later tonight, not one, but 2 of the gigantic CNRL cokers will be moved simultaneously from the Edmonton foundry where they were built to the outskirts of the city.
We're going to be moving 2 of them at the same time out of the city, which is for a combined length of over 600 feet, including tractors and trailers. Each vessel weighs approximately 950,000 pounds. Overall width of our unit's going to be 34 feet wide. We're going to be 37'9" high.
Each 500-ton coker unit is raised by specially designed hydraulic jacks and lowered onto its own trailer, resting on a pair of massive custom-fabricated cradles, each weighing almost 10,000 pounds. The trailers are made ready for the move, which is scheduled to begin after dark. Midnight, and time for the move to begin. Each individual coker will require a team of up to 20 Mammoet personnel to move. The massive trailers begin to roll. The move is being done at night to minimize traffic problems. And there'll only be 6 hours to move the trailers and their million-pound loads to the city outskirts. To provide the power necessary to move the massive cokers, it will take up to 3 550-horsepower prime movers hooked to each trailer to haul their cargo.
Most of the journey, we're going to have 3 tractors on it, 550 horsepower apiece. And for hills and stuff like that, we may go to 4 or 5 tractors.
In order to evenly distribute the weight of its massive million-pound load, and to prevent permanent damage to the road surface along its 300-mile journey, each trailer will ride on a staggering 360 tires. Incredibly, that in itself won't be enough to prevent road damage, which is why the move has been planned for the middle of winter, when normally soft asphalt is frozen rock solid, and in spite of the risk of bitterly cold temperatures and poor traction during the move. As the trailers begin their slow journey through the city, a small army of almost 40 people, police, utility workers, and traffic officials will be needed to make sure that the route through the city is clear for the move. And the crews have already begun their work 3 hours ahead of time. That's because, sitting on their trailers, the gigantic cokers are almost 38 feet, or more than 2 stories high. A good 6 feet higher than most of the power lines and traffic lights along the route out of the city.
It's 11.3 meters high. Our aerial lines are up into that vicinity, if not lower. We've taken lots of precautions. We're going to be de-energizing some of it. We're going to be lifting some of it. And basically everything should go good that way.
And so, one by one, dozens of power lines are painstakingly lifted or disconnected, and overhead signs and traffic signals taken down to allow the enormous cokers to pass by.
There's power lines, there's signs, there's light posts, there's all sorts of obstructions to get out of the city. And one of our biggest challenges is getting it out of the city and turning the corners, meeting the grades, and getting it out in time so that we don't disrupt traffic the next morning.
I've got roughly 10 patrol members out today. We're shutting down the road totally to make sure that the loads don't get mixed up with any vehicular traffic along the route. And safety is the ultimate goal here.
The 300-foot length of each load also poses another problem. How do you turn a tight corner on a city street with a payload so long? The Mammoet team's ingenious solution was to custom design and build a special 3-point suspension system at the pivot point of each trailer to eliminate stresses in the coker during transport. The result is a remarkably tight turning radius, especially considering that each of the cokers are almost as long as a full city block. Mile by painstaking mile, the first 2 CNRL cokers finally reach the city limits and the end of the first stage of their long journey to the remote wilderness of the Alberta oil sands. The second phase of the long and difficult move involves traveling 300 miles of narrow highway, much of which will be through sparsely populated wilderness in the frigid cold of a Canadian winter.
And another one of the big challenges is cold temperature as far as operating equipment.
You're dealing with the weather, the impact of the weather, snow, fog, icy roads, extreme cold temperatures. That's all challenging because a decision needs to be made whether you can start the transport or not.
At an average speed of just 10 miles per hour, the cokers will take almost 6 days, traveling only during the short hours of winter daylight, to reach their final destination. Now, the challenges will be the bitterly cold temperatures, traffic along the narrow and busy highway, and bridges. The designers of these 40-year-old bridges could never have imagined that anything as large and as heavy as the CNRL cokers would ever pass over them. They were carefully inspected and tested months ahead of time With all but one prime mover unhitched to minimize the load, the cokers are coaxed inch by nail-biting inch across 21 bridges along the route. And although some of them could actually be seen bowing under the tremendous weight, the bridges hold up. On some days along the journey, the temperature dips below -20 degrees.
Today it's minus 21 degrees Celsius with about a 15-mile-an-hour wind. Everything, it always puts everybody under a little extra strain. You know, safety becomes a big factor because safety, the risk of an accident increases.
And every day, some of the 360 tires on each trailer will go flat from the incredible weight they bear, and they'll have to be changed. All of these setbacks have been anticipated and planned for by the Mammoet team. And each coker travels with its own full-time mechanic, ready to deal with any problem. The last major obstacle on the coker's long journey to its final destination will be this: Super Test Hill, a steep 1,000-foot-long incline that will require at least 2 more of the 550 horsepower prime movers, a total of 6 in all, to help pull the million-pound load up the slope. In these icy winter conditions, traction is a major problem. Finally, after 6 days and 300 miles in sub-zero temperatures, the arduous journey is almost over, and the last of the massive cokers reaches its final destination, the CNRL plant site. The final phase of the job, and the last challenge facing the Mammoet team, is to lift the last million-pound coker off its trailer and into position beside its sisters. To do this, Mammoet has shipped its own specially designed portable crane by rail. Known as a PTC, this truly gigantic lifting machine, which took more than a month to assemble before the cokers arrived, has a staggering 1,600-ton capacity, more than 3 times the weight of one of the gigantic CNRL cokers, and can lift its load up to 550 feet in the air. A unique feature of the Mammoet crane is that it's mounted on an 80-foot diameter ring of track, allowing it to lift any object within a wide vicinity without having to be disassembled and moved.
The competitors would have to use a completely different crane, which took up a lot more area and sterilized a lot of equipment. The PTC can actually set all of the equipment from one spot without moving. That's the unique thing about the size of the PTC.
A smaller 450-ton crane is also used to hoist the other end. Amazingly, the entire operation, hoisting the enormous 500-ton, 300-foot-long coker from horizontal to vertical and then precisely maneuvering it to its final resting place, takes barely 2 hours to complete. 4 cokers, 500 tons, 300 feet long, 2 stories high. Traffic, power lines, 300 miles of narrow highway, icy winter roads, and a bitter Canadian winter. These would seem to be almost impossible challenges to meet. But the people at Mammoet make it look as if it's just another routine job.
It's another job well done on behalf of all the crew, the engineering, everything that's gone into it, all the support staff, the field personnel, the jacking crews, everybody's done a phenomenal job.
In the Mammoet world, transportation and lifting of equipment like this is just a day-to-day thing.
Yeah, moved by Mammoet. That's our logo. We live by that.
It's a well-known fact that Mammoet is a worldwide organization that moves anytime that anybody in the world needs something moved.
Good, safe company to work with.
Their ultimate goal is safety, and the move is done in a very professional manner.
No matter what it is in this company, I've found that if the challenge comes, all of its employees and the crews and the engineering all step up and say, yeah, it can be done, and they figure out a way to get it done for the client. It's always impressed me since I've started here.
This is just the day-to-day routine stuff in the Mammoet world.
We'll always succeed.